that you cannot help but enter in. But this is not a book about suffering for the sake of suffering. Instead, this work leads you deeper into an experience of Christ, the suffering servant, and along the way exposes the faux Christ of middle-class privilege. Enter this journey soberly, intending to feel it all. As you do, examine your own journey of pain, maybe the pain you've pushed down for so many years. With Alia, experience the Christ who is, and always will be, Emmanuel, God with us, the God who bends low in our suffering and whispers, "I'm so sorry." Seth Haynes, author of Coming Clean, A Story of Faith. Introduction. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Every weakness contains within itself a strength. Shusaku Endo. This book isn't for everyone. My publisher's marketing team might not want me to tell you that, book sales being what they are these days, especially for a relatively obscure first-time author who is known primarily for writing her feelings on the internet. But there you have it. When I first had an inkling that I had this book beginning in me, I was bawling my eyes out in the emergency room. You'll read the details later if you decide this book is, in fact, for you. I was vulnerable and hurting, thinking of how much of my life I've spent in hospitals. I wrote on my now sorely neglected blog, I don't want to live like a vagrant anymore. I don't want to be known for my lack, my weakness, my constant recurring despair. I wrote it in the midst of a deep depression when I could barely get out of bed. My daughter Kaya had climbed up next to me, clutched both sides of my face in her tiny palms and said, "I'm sorry you're hurting, Mommy," staring into my tear-filled eyes. I wanted so desperately to tell her I was fine, to pretend again, but I lacked the stamina to even try. It didn't matter to depression that I had a loving and faithful husband in Josh, that Judah, Kaya, and Nehemiah continued growing into kind, compassionate children, despite my inability to fix myself. I wanted the meds to work, and to not be the kind of person consoled by their children. So this is not the book I'd have chosen for myself. I don't want to be the author who writes about how weak she is. Truth is, no one wants to be that person. The one always in crisis, the one who is always sick or struggling, the one who always feels like a burden. No one wants to need. No one wants to be found lacking. Nobody wants a ministry of weakness. In any case, this is the book that started burning a hole in my gut with a message God wouldn't let me shake, that we are called to a ministry of weakness, that in fact we cannot know grace without it. After that hospital visit, I began meditating on the scripture found in Matthew 5:3, where Jesus says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven," New International Version. We live in a society that despises lack. We don't value poverty, that's for sure. So what does it mean to be poor in spirit? How could that possibly be what God desires for us? How is it a blessing to need? I've come close to death many times, first with childhood leukemia, but then many more times with chronic and mental illnesses. I've been sick for much of my life. I have bipolar disorder, which in itself is often fatal. Something like 1 in 4 will lose that battle to suicide. Unfortunately, we don't talk much about suicide in the church. When I first wrote the words bipolar disorder on my blog, I was terrified. What would people think? But I knew I had family support and generous readers, and so I began writing about faith and mental illness, about sitting with God in the dark, and the emails started coming in. I discovered that the lights have gone out for many of us. You know how, when you close your eyes, for a moment you can still see the outline of what you were looking at as faint orbs. That's how it felt when the light went out for me. I knew the light had mass and form, and it was still there, but I couldn't make out anything. It's the smallest hope of light, and it's that hope of light that I want to share. When the whole world goes dark, even the tiniest glimmer shines. Looking back at my childhood, I can see that the dark edges always closed in, even among the beautiful things, even among the treasures. But now I also see that God continually promises beauty from ashes, redemption from our sorrow. When I was a girl in the bright and beautiful world, the neighborhood kids and I played pirates. We cut up grocery bags and took the rough brown paper to draw out and place our treasure. We could navigate the world to the correct spot if we just knew where the X was. To age